What do angels look like? People say, well, what did it look like? Well, do people think they carry harps? Well, there was a harp inside Lucifer. The theologians say he had the instruments. He had the instruments in him. He was the worship leader in heaven. Do they wear long robes? Do they have blonde hair? Do they all look the same, right? Well, angels are spirits, and there's really not a lot of clear description about what they actually look like other than what I've already taught you with the seraphim, the cherubim. They had the 4 heads and the 6 wings and all those things. We talked about that previously. But there's all kinds of different, manifestations of angels. And if you look in the Bible, besides what I taught you, we're talking about seeing them in the spirit versus seeing them manifest in the natural. And so you could see them manifest in the natural. You could also see them in the spirit. We're going to talk about some of these things, but for many people in the Bible, if you look at all the people who saw angels, most of them fell on their face and they were scared to death. They're trembling. The fear of the Lord descended upon them. So this is not a little, fat baby-looking cherub with a harp, and it's not like that. These are fearful, awesome creatures, right? But they can manifest in different ways. Let's look what Scripture says. Angels are spirits, but they can take on a human body. They can take on the form of a human. It doesn't make them human. They're not human, but they can take the form of a human. Hebrews 13, verse 2. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unknowingly. That's a curious scripture to me. I wonder sometimes, have we entertained angels and didn't know it? That'd be pretty cool. Be more cool if we knew it, but I wouldn't be surprised. Would not be surprised. Judges 13. Judges 13, verses 6 through 7. The woman went to her husband and said, a man of God came to me. He looked like a very fearsome angel of God. You know why he looked like a very fearsome angel of God? Because he was a very fearsome angel of God. But it came in human form. So, it was like, he looked like I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. Now, I could teach a whole class on this, and I've taught little things about this before. When an angel comes to you, and I mentioned this last week, don't start giving them the 3rd degree. There's nobody in Scripture that ever asked the angel their name. And the angel told them. One time, the angel said, I think it was the angel, why do you ask me my name? And that was Jesus, the pre-incarnate Jesus, the angel of the Lord. But we're not supposed to have normal dialogue with these creatures. It doesn't matter what their name is. It really doesn't matter what their name is. Most of the angels I've seen, God has given me their function rather than their name. Like the fire angels and the breakthrough angels that is mentioned. And I'm sure they all have names. I'm sure they do. Because if Gabriel had a name and Lucifer had a name and Michael had a name, God names the angels, right? But we don't need to ask them their name. He said, and he said to me, you will conceive and bear a son. Now do not drink wine or strong drink, and do not eat anything ritually unclean, for the boy will be a Nazirite to God from the womb until the day he dies. And of course, they're talking about Samson. So we don't see any angels in Scripture presenting in human form as a female, and I'm not saying that they can. I'm just saying we don't see any in Scripture. So if you're going to see anything regarding females and angels, you better do a double check and a double click and really make sure that that's what you're seeing, because we don't see it in Scripture. So again, I am not saying that there couldn't possibly be an angel that manifested with a female figure. I've seen Jezebel in the spirit, and Jezebel manifested as a female, even though we know that's a hermaphrodite spirit. So, but I'm just saying, if you do see something female and it's manifesting, you really need to make sure you double test, triple test, because it's not in Scripture. And I have to wonder why it's not. It must be that it's either not possible or that it's rare. Now, when I told the story about how I walked out the restaurant after I, got out of jail, falsely accused of a crime I didn't commit, And I turned around, this lady came up and asked for money. I didn't have any, and the Lord said, turn around, give her the food. I went to turn around, and the person was gone. There's no way they could have disappeared that fast. So seems like that was an angel to me, but you have to be very careful you don't make doctrines out of those things. Just because you had an experience or something happened one time doesn't mean it's the norm. So clearly female angels or even female representations of angels are not the norm, because you don't see it in Scripture. So if somebody put a gun to my head and said, please don't ever do that. Don't put a gun to my head. But if somebody did put a gun to my head and said male or female, I would say they're male. Because the Hebrew word is male, the Greek word is male, but I'm not going to limit God at the same time, because there's a lot of things that aren't in Scripture. But we've just seen so much deception around female angels. Like there was a famous prophet, and I respect the prophet, and he said that the prophetic movement was started by a female angel named Emma, and I don't believe that. I just don't believe it. And I respect the prophet, but I don't believe it. That Emma birthed the prophetic movement. I just don't believe that. Maybe it's true, but I don't believe it. So people then get all twisted with that. So when angels appear in Scripture, they're wearing clothes. Aren't you glad?